The worst betrayals never come from strangers. They come from the people who already know exactly where your heart is. I woke to the sharp scent of antiseptic and fresh linen instead of white roses and wedding candles. My tailored ivory jacket had been cut open along one sleeve, exposing a neat bandage wrapped around my forearm. The room around me was quiet except for the steady hum of an air conditioner and the muffled voices drifting through the hallway beyond the closed door. For one strange second, I thought I had overslept on my wedding morning. Then I noticed the gold wedding band resting on my finger, and the memory crashed into me all at once. The champagne. Ryan's smile. No calling my name. I pushed myself upright too quickly, and the room tilted just enough to remind me my body wasn't ready to move. Before I could make sense of anything, the door opened. Noah stepped inside, still wearing the black tuxedo he'd put on that morning, though it no longer looked untouched. His tie had been loosened, one cuff was missing, and tiny flecks of dried champagne stained the sleeve of his jacket. His silver-gray eyes met mine with the kind of relief a person tried very hard not to show. "You're awake," he said quietly. I searched his face for answers, but all I found was exhaustion. "What happened?" My own voice sounded unfamiliar, rough around the edges. Noah didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached for a clear evidence bag resting on the small table beside the bed. Inside were 3 elegant champagne flutes, each marked with bright evidence labels. 3 glasses, not one. "Your brother tampered with one of these," Noah finally said. "The problem is, Ethan, we're still trying to determine which one you actually drank." My stomach tightened. "Trying?" I whispered. "I don't remember." Noah nodded once, almost reluctantly. "You remember everything until the toast." I closed my eyes, forcing myself backward through scattered fragments that refused to fit together. White orchids hanging from crystal chandeliers. Soft piano music echoing across the ballroom. My mother's smile that looked perfect for every photographer but never quite reached her eyes. Ryan, standing beside me with 2 champagne flutes balanced effortlessly in one hand, laughing louder than he had in years. No, 3 glasses. There had been 3. My pulse quickened. I remembered thinking that was odd, but someone had stepped between us before I could ask why. "Where's Ryan?" I asked. Noah looked toward the hallway instead of answering. Beyond the door, I heard the distant crackle of a police radio, followed by footsteps moving across polished marble. "He's being questioned," Noah replied carefully. "Questioned?" I repeated. "Not arrested?" Noah drew a slow breath. "Not yet." Silence settled between us. I looked down at my ring again. We'd exchanged vows. Somehow, despite everything, we were married. But I couldn't remember our first kiss as husbands. I couldn't remember walking back down the aisle. I couldn't even remember whether I'd finished the toast. My wedding day had become 17 missing minutes that no one seemed willing to explain. "Noah," I said, meeting his eyes, "tell me the truth." Before he could answer, another voice echoed from outside the room. "Detective Bennett, we recovered additional security footage." The words landed harder than I expected. Security footage. Evidence. Detectives. None of that belonged at a wedding. Noah closed his eyes for a brief moment before looking back at me. "There are things you need to remember on your own," he said softly. "Because if I tell you now, you'll never trust your own memories again." I stared at the evidence bag one more time. 3 champagne glasses. 1 brother. 1 wedding. And somewhere inside the 17 minutes my mind had erased was the moment everything I'd believed about my family began to fall apart. For hours earlier, the ballroom had still smelled like fresh flowers, warm candlelight, and promises that everyone except me already knew were about to be broken. 4 hours earlier, I believed the hardest part of the day would be keeping my emotions under control while standing in front of 200 guests. The Grand Oak Ballroom overlooked the Hudson River, its floor-to-ceiling windows flooding the room with soft autumn sunlight that reflected off hundreds of white orchids. Suspended above the dance floor, Everything looked exactly the way Noah and I had planned it during months of late-night conversations, except for one detail neither of us had been able to change. My family. My mother greeted investors before she greeted me. My father spent 20 minutes discussing business with distant relatives while barely acknowledging the fact that his youngest son was getting married. It should have hurt, but disappointment loses its sharp edges after enough years. You simply begin expecting it. Ryan, however, was different. He arrived almost 40 minutes early wearing an expensive navy tuxedo and the same effortless smile that had convinced people to trust him his entire life. The moment he saw me, he spread his arms wide as if the past had never happened. "You look good, little brother," he said warmly before straightening my tie with practiced hands. "Today is your day." I searched his face for the familiar signs of sarcasm or hidden resentment, but they were nowhere to be found. Instead, he looked strangely relaxed, almost relieved. "Thank you," I answered carefully. "I am glad you came. I would not miss this." He smiled again. "Family should show up when it matters." The sentence sounded perfect. Too perfect. Before I could think about it any longer, my mother appeared beside us carrying her phone in one hand. "Ryan has been helping all morning," she said proudly. "Without him, this wedding would have been a disaster." I glanced around the ballroom where a professional planning team was quietly adjusting floral arrangements with flawless precision. Ryan had not organized anything. He had simply arrived early. Somehow that was enough to earn praise I had spent my entire childhood chasing. Noah found me a few minutes later near the windows overlooking the river. The tension in my shoulders disappeared the instant our eyes met. He did not need to ask how I was feeling. Somehow he always knew. "You still have time to run," he joked softly. I laughed. "Too late. You already signed the paperwork." "Best decision I ever made." He brushed an invisible speck of dust from my jacket before lowering his voice. "If anything feels off today, tell me immediately." I raised an eyebrow. "You sound like my lawyer instead of my fiancé." He smiled, but something behind his eyes remained guarded. Before I could ask what he meant, his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen for less than a second before slipping it back into his pocket. "I need 5 minutes," he said. "Detective Claire is here." "A detective?" I asked, surprised. "She is an old friend," Noah replied smoothly. "She wanted to congratulate us before heading out of town." It sounded reasonable, but the explanation arrived just a little too quickly. He squeezed my hand and disappeared toward a quiet hallway beside the ballroom. I told myself not to overthink it. Weddings attracted unexpected guests all the time. Still, curiosity tugged at me. A few moments later, I wandered toward the same hallway, intending only to tell Noah the photographer was ready. As I rounded the corner, I heard Claire speaking before either of them noticed I was there. "Once Ethan signs after the ceremony," she said quietly, "Ryan loses access." My footsteps stopped instantly. Noah answered in a voice too low for me to catch every word. I only heard fragments. "Documents, trust, after today, he cannot." My chest tightened. Access to what? Why had Noah never mentioned any of this? Was our marriage connected to something involving my family finances? Had everyone except me been discussing decisions about my future? Before I could hear another sentence, a hotel employee walked past carrying fresh floral arrangements, blocking my view. By the time I stepped forward again, Noah and Claire were already moving in the opposite direction. I turned away before either of them noticed me standing there. For the first time that morning, excitement gave way to uncertainty. I loved Noah with every part of my heart, but old wounds have a way of whispering familiar lies. I had spent years wondering whether people stayed because they loved me or because they needed something from me. As I walked back into the ballroom, Ryan spotted me immediately. He lifted 3 crystal champagne flutes from a passing server's tray and smiled with perfect confidence. "There you are," he called. I was just about to make a toast. Ryan held the tray with effortless confidence, the crystal stems balanced between his fingers as though he had rehearsed the moment. 3 champagne glasses shimmered beneath the ballroom lights. each one catching tiny reflections from the chandeliers overhead. Guests continued chatting around us, unaware that my attention had narrowed to those 3 glasses alone. Something about them felt wrong. Not dramatic, not obvious, just wrong in a way I could not explain. "One for you," Ryan said, handing the first glass toward me. "One for Noah." He lifted a second. Then he casually raised the third with a grin. "And one for the brother who finally gets to stop pretending he does not approve." Several nearby guests laughed politely. My mother smiled with visible relief, clearly grateful that Ryan was performing the role of the supportive older brother. My father nodded once before returning to a conversation with one of his business partners. No one questioned why Ryan had brought 3 glasses himself instead of letting a server handle the toast. I accepted the flute without thinking, but as my fingers wrapped around the stem, I noticed Ryan was not looking at me. His eyes were fixed across the ballroom, searching for Noah. The expression lasted only a heartbeat before another polished smile appeared, but I had seen it. He was waiting for something. Noah emerged from the hallway a moment later with Detective Claire several steps behind him. Claire offered me a warm smile and a brief congratulations before disappearing toward the reception desk, leaving Noah to cross the room alone. When his eyes met mine, I expected the familiar calm that always settled my nerves. Instead, I saw him glance directly at the champagne in my hand. His pace slowed almost imperceptibly. Ryan noticed it too. "Perfect timing," Ryan called cheerfully. "Come celebrate with us." Noah reached us and accepted the second flute without taking his eyes off Ryan. "Thank you," he said politely. Ryan lifted his own glass. "To fresh starts," he announced. "To leaving old misunderstandings behind us. And to family finally becoming whole." The words sounded generous, but something inside me tightened. Ryan had spent years reminding me that I was the disappointment in the Blake family. He had mocked nearly every important decision I had ever made. Yet today he spoke like someone eager to erase history. I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But belief had become difficult. Noah lightly tapped his glass against mine, then against Ryan's. The clear ring echoed above the soft music. As he lowered his arm, I noticed his attention drift briefly toward the tray, still resting on a nearby cocktail table. His eyes lingered there for only a second before returning to Ryan. It was such a small movement that no one else would have noticed. I almost ignored it myself. Then I looked down into my champagne. Tiny bubbles floated upward in steady streams, but near the bottom of the glass something caught the light differently. It looked like a faint cloud, barely visible beneath the pale gold liquid. I tilted the glass slightly. The cloudy swirl disappeared, then slowly settled again. My heartbeat quickened. Perhaps it was nothing more than undissolved sugar or sediment from an expensive vintage. I had never claimed to know much about champagne. Still, I could not shake the feeling that I should not drink it. Before I could say anything, my mother stepped closer with an impatient smile. "Everyone is waiting, Ethan," she whispered. "Do not make this awkward." Around us, conversations quieted as guests turned their attention toward our small circle. Cameras lifted. Someone near the band applauded, expecting a heartfelt family moment before the ceremony officially resumed. Ryan's smile never moved. "Come on, little brother," he said gently. "It is only one sip." I glanced toward Noah, silently hoping he would say something, anything. Instead, he asked an unexpected question. "Ryan, where did you get these glasses?" The room remained cheerful, but Ryan answered half a second too late. "From a passing server," he replied with an easy shrug. "Why?" Noah studied him without speaking. The silence lasted only a few seconds, yet it felt strangely heavy. Ryan chuckled. "You are not about to cross-examine me at your own wedding, are you?" A few guests laughed again. Noah smiled politely, though his eyes did not. "Professional habit," he answered. Ryan raised his glass higher. "Then let us not overthink happiness." I looked back into my champagne one final time. The faint cloud at the bottom had almost disappeared completely. Maybe I was imagining everything because of what I had overheard in the hallway. Maybe my own doubts were turning ordinary moments into suspicious ones. Wanting to silence the questions racing through my mind, I slowly lifted the glass toward my lips. Across from me, Ryan was still watching Noah instead of watching me. Time seemed to slow as the rim of the champagne glass touched my lower lip. Before I could take a sip, I noticed something that made me hesitate. A faint fingerprint smudge marked the side of Noah's glass, and for the briefest moment I realized the two flutes looked almost identical. My eyes shifted from my own hand to his, then back again. Had we picked them up in the order Ryan intended, or had someone switched them while we were talking? The thought arrived without warning, sending a quiet wave of uneasiness through my chest. Ryan was still smiling, but there was tension around his eyes that had not been there before. He was not watching me enjoy the toast. He was measuring Noah's every movement. Noah lowered his glass slightly, his expression calm but focused. "Ethan," he said evenly, "before we drink, would you mind showing me your glass?" His request sounded casual enough that most guests continued smiling, assuming he was making another joke. I looked at him in confusion. "Why? Just humor me." Ryan laughed a little louder than necessary. "Come on, Noah. You are making a champagne toast sound like a courtroom exhibit." My mother sighed under her breath. "Please, can we have one normal family moment?" Cameras continued flashing from every direction. Friends waited patiently. The wedding planner gave me an encouraging nod from across the ballroom, unaware that my heartbeat had begun to race. I studied the pale golden liquid again. The faint cloud I had noticed earlier was almost impossible to see now, yet I could not convince myself it had never been there. Noah extended his free hand toward me. "Ethan." His voice remained steady, but I recognized the subtle urgency beneath it. Before I could respond, Ryan stepped half a pace closer. "He is fine," he said with an easy smile. "You are making him nervous for no reason." The distance between us suddenly felt much smaller than before. I looked from Ryan to Noah, trapped between two completely different versions of reality. One man had been my brother for my entire life. The other had become the person I trusted more than anyone else. Yet only one of them was asking me not to rush. My fingers tightened around the stem of the glass. Then another thought struck me. Ryan had insisted on handing Noah a specific flute. If the glasses had somehow been exchanged during the conversation, was it possible Ryan no longer knew which one was meant for whom? I lowered my glass instead of raising it. "Actually," I said slowly, forcing a smile for the guests watching us, "maybe we should trade. Just for fun." Ryan's expression changed so quickly that he could not hide it. His smile disappeared for a fraction of a second before returning. "Why would you do that?" he asked. It was such a simple question, yet it answered one of my own. If the champagne was perfectly ordinary, switching glasses should not have mattered. Noah noticed the same reaction. He did not speak. He simply watched Ryan with quiet attention. "Because it is my wedding," I replied lightly. "I can be unpredictable." I reached toward Noah's flute, intending to exchange them. Ryan moved instantly. His hand closed around my wrist with surprising speed, not painfully, but firmly enough to stop me. "No," he said, almost before he realized he had spoken aloud. The ballroom fell strangely quiet. Ryan released my wrist at once and forced out an awkward laugh. "I mean, why bother? You already have one." Nobody else seemed certain how to react. My mother frowned as if I had somehow created an uncomfortable scene. My father looked irritated by the interruption more than concerned by Ryan's behavior. Noah gently placed his untouched champagne on a nearby table without taking his eyes off my brother. "Ryan," he asked softly, "why were you so worried about Ethan changing glasses?" Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time all afternoon, he did not have an immediate answer. I looked down at the faint red mark where his fingers had briefly stopped my hand. It was not the grip that unsettled me. It was the panic I had seen in his face. My brother had not been afraid that I would drink from the wrong glass. He had been afraid that someone else might. No one spoke. The ballroom remained perfectly still, as though every conversation, every laugh, and every note from the string quartet had quietly disappeared into the high ceiling. Ryan slowly withdrew his hand and adjusted the cuff of his jacket as if nothing unusual had happened. "You are reading far too much into this," he said with an easy chuckle that sounded carefully rehearsed. "I just did not want anyone spilling champagne all over a custom tuxedo 5 minutes before the ceremony." A few nervous laughs echoed from nearby guests, but they faded almost immediately. Noah did not smile. He calmly picked up his untouched champagne flute again, turning it slightly beneath the light. "Interesting," he said. "Why is that interesting?" Ryan asked. "Because you answered a question I never asked." Ryan blinked once. "What do you mean?" Noah looked directly at him. "I asked why you were concerned about Ethan changing glasses. You answered by talking about spilling champagne." My pulse became louder than the music. Ryan opened his mouth, then shrugged. "Maybe I misunderstood." "Maybe," Noah replied. His voice remained completely even, which somehow made the silence around us even heavier. I glanced toward my parents, hoping one of them would notice that something felt wrong. Instead, my mother folded her arms and gave me the same disappointed look she had worn countless times throughout my childhood. "Ethan," she said quietly, "your brother came here trying to make peace. Please do not turn this into another family argument." Another family argument. Those words had followed me for years. Whenever Ryan crossed a line, I somehow became the one accused of creating tension simply because I reacted. My father sighed impatiently before checking his watch. "Guests are waiting," he said. "Finish the toast and move on." I looked from one face to another. Friends smiled awkwardly, unsure whether they should keep watching or politely look away. The photographer lowered his camera, sensing that whatever was happening no longer belonged in a wedding album. Noah finally placed his own glass back onto the cocktail table. "No one needs to drink anything yet," he said. "Let us simply get fresh glasses." Ryan's expression stiffened almost imperceptibly. "That seems unnecessary." "Does it?" Noah asked. "There are hundreds of clean glasses in this hotel." Ryan folded his arms. "You are insulting me over nothing. Then replacing the drinks should not bother you." Another long pause settled between them. I realized something strange. Noah was no longer trying to prove Ryan had done anything wrong. He was giving him every opportunity to choose the simple solution. Ryan refused every one of them. Detective Claire appeared at the far end of the ballroom, carrying a folder beneath one arm. She slowed when she noticed the unusual silence, but did not interrupt. Her eyes briefly met Noah's before she remained where she was, quietly observing. Ryan noticed her too. For the first time all afternoon, genuine uncertainty crossed his face. It vanished almost instantly beneath another practiced smile. "Fine," he said. "If fresh glasses make everyone feel better, I will get them myself." He reached toward the tray. Noah spoke before his fingers touched it. "Leave those exactly where they are." Ryan froze. "Why?" "Because I would prefer no one handle them." The sentence was calm, almost conversational, yet it changed the atmosphere completely. Several nearby guests exchanged confused glances. My mother stepped forward. "Noah, this is becoming ridiculous." He turned toward her respectfully. "Mrs. Blake, I understand why it appears that way. I am simply asking everyone to wait a few minutes." "For what?" she demanded. Noah did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked at me. There was trust in his eyes, but there was also a question. He was waiting to see whether I would stand beside him or allow my family to pressure me into ending the conversation. Every old instinct told me to apologize, to smooth everything over, to tell Noah we should forget it and continue with the ceremony. That was what I had always done. Keep the peace. Accept the blame. Pretend nothing had happened. I looked at the 3 untouched champagne glasses resting beneath the ballroom lights. Then I remembered Ryan's face when I suggested switching drinks. It had not been surprise. It had been fear. I slowly set my own flute beside Noah's. "I agree," I said quietly. "Nobody drinks until we know why my brother was so afraid of changing glasses." Across the room, Detective Claire reached for the small radio clipped to her jacket, and Ryan's smile disappeared completely. Detective Claire did not rush forward. She simply spoke quietly into her radio, and within seconds 2 hotel security managers appeared near the ballroom entrance without causing a scene. Most of the guests assumed they were responding to an ordinary hotel issue, but Ryan knew better. I saw it in the way his shoulders stiffened before he quickly forced himself to relax again. "This has gone far enough," my father said sharply. "Noah, you have embarrassed this family in front of everyone." Noah remained completely composed. "That was never my intention." "Then explain yourself," my mother demanded. "Because from where we are standing, you are accusing my son without presenting a single piece of evidence." Noah looked at me first instead of answering them. His expression carried something I had never seen before. "Regret. There is something I should have told you weeks ago," he said quietly. The words settled heavily in my chest. "What are you talking about?" I asked. He drew a slow breath. "I hired a forensic accounting firm 3 months ago." My heart skipped. "Why?" "Because several charitable accounts connected to the Blake Family Trust were quietly losing money every quarter. At first I believed it was bookkeeping errors. It was not." Ryan folded his arms and laughed. "Now this is unbelievable. You investigate my family before marrying into it." Noah did not even look at him. "I investigated missing funds that were supposed to support medical programs for young families. Whoever redirected that money knew exactly how to hide it." The ballroom grew even quieter. Several guests exchanged uncertain glances while others slowly lowered their champagne glasses onto nearby tables. I stared at Noah, struggling to process what I was hearing. "You knew all of this?" I whispered. "You never told me?" "I wanted proof before placing that burden on you," he answered honestly. "I also believed the investigation would be finished before today." "So that conversation with Claire," I began. Noah nodded. "She has been coordinating with financial investigators. The documents were finalized this morning." My stomach tightened as another memory returned. Once Ethan signs after the ceremony, Ryan loses access. "The trust," I said quietly. "When we sign the marriage paperwork, the authority over the family trust changes," Noah admitted. "Your grandfather wrote the agreement years ago. Once you married, Ryan would no longer be able to approve transfers by himself. Every major withdrawal would require your authorization as well." I felt the floor disappear beneath me. Why did nobody tell me I was part of this? My father answered before Noah could. "Because it was never necessary for you to worry about financial matters." I looked at him in disbelief. "I am 30 years old. Ryan has always handled those responsibilities," my mother added quickly. "He understands them." Noah finally turned toward my parents. "With respect, that arrangement allowed millions of dollars to disappear over several years." Ryan's smile returned, but this time it looked strained. "That is a serious accusation." "It is," Noah agreed, "which is why I have not made it publicly yet." Ryan stepped closer, his voice calm enough that only those nearest could hear. "Ethan, listen to yourself. He investigates your family behind your back, hides it from you for months, then waits until your wedding to reveal everything. Does that sound like trust?" The question landed exactly where Ryan intended. Doubt crept into my thoughts despite everything. Noah had hidden something enormous from me. Even if his reasons had been good, the secret still hurt. Ryan saw the hesitation in my eyes and gently shook his head. "You think I am the one manipulating you," he said softly. "But he has been planning every move from the beginning. Once you marry him, he controls every decision involving our family's legacy." I looked at Noah, waiting for him to deny it. Instead, he answered with complete honesty. "No, I cannot deny that the marriage changes the trust. But I never wanted control, Ethan. I wanted transparency. There is a difference." Before I could respond, Detective Claire approached holding a sealed evidence envelope. She stopped beside Noah and spoke quietly enough that only a few of us could hear. "The laboratory confirmed they can begin testing the champagne immediately." Ryan's eyes shifted toward the three untouched glasses for only a fraction of a second, but that single glance told me more than any explanation ever could. He was not worried about financial records anymore. He was worried about what those glasses might reveal. The ballroom no longer sounded like a wedding. The quiet conversations had been replaced by cautious whispers as guests tried to understand why a celebration had suddenly become an investigation. Detective Claire carefully sealed the three champagne glasses inside separate evidence bags, while one of the hotel managers politely asked the catering staff not to remove anything from the nearby tables. Every movement became deliberate. Every glance carried questions no one wanted to ask aloud. Ryan remained surprisingly calm. In fact, he looked calmer than anyone else in the room. He adjusted his jacket, smiled politely at a few guests, and even offered an apologetic shrug as though this had all been one unfortunate misunderstanding. If I had not seen the panic on his face only minutes earlier, I might have believed him. "Everyone," Ryan said with practiced confidence. "I think we are letting stress ruin what should have been Ethan's happiest day. Noah has every right to be protective, but surely we can agree that this has gone too far." Several distant relatives nodded uncertainly. They did not know the full story. They only saw two well-dressed men disagreeing in the middle of a wedding reception. My mother immediately stepped beside Ryan. "He is right," she insisted. "The family trust has nothing to do with today. This is about a champagne toast that has been blown completely out of proportion." Noah answered quietly. "If that is true, then laboratory testing will prove it." "Exactly," Ryan replied without hesitation. "Which means everyone can stop treating me like a criminal." His confidence should have reassured me, yet something still felt wrong. Ryan kept talking, but every few seconds his eyes drifted toward the ballroom entrance, measuring the distance without seeming obvious. He was calculating something. Detective Claire noticed it too. She casually repositioned herself between Ryan and the nearest exit while continuing her conversation with one of the security managers. The movement was subtle enough that most guests never realized what she had done. Noah leaned closer to me and spoke so quietly that only I could hear him. "If Ryan asks you to leave this room with him for any reason, do not go." I looked at him. "You really believe he would try something?" Noah did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked across the ballroom toward Ryan. "I believe desperate people make desperate decisions when they realize they have run out of options." Before I could respond, Ryan suddenly walked toward me with an expression of genuine concern. "Ethan," he said softly, "can we talk privately? Just for 2 minutes. No lawyers. No detectives. Just brothers." Every instinct inside me wanted to say yes. For years I had chased moments exactly like this, hoping we could somehow become the family I always imagined we could be. Even now, after everything that had happened, a part of me still wanted to believe there was an explanation that would make sense of it all. Noah did not interrupt. He simply looked at me and gave the smallest nod, silently letting me decide for myself. That simple gesture reminded me of something important. He had never once told me what to think. Ryan always had. I slowly shook my head. "If you have something to say," I answered, "you can say it here." Ryan's smile weakened for the first time. "Not everything belongs in front of an audience. Neither does deception," I replied. The words surprised even me. My entire life I had avoided confrontation with Ryan. Now they came naturally. He studied my face for several long seconds before letting out a disappointed sigh. "He has already turned you against your own family." "No," I said quietly. "The truth is doing that." The sentence seemed to reach every corner of the silent ballroom. My father looked away. My mother pressed her lips together without speaking. Ryan lowered his eyes for only a moment before looking back at me with an expression I had not seen since we were children. It was not anger. It was calculation. At that exact moment, one of the catering assistants hurried across the ballroom, carrying a replacement tray of fresh champagne for another group of guests. As she passed nearby, Ryan instinctively took half a step toward the tray before immediately stopping himself. It lasted less than a second, but Detective Claire noticed. So did Noah. Claire quietly spoke into her radio again. Within moments, another investigator approached, carrying a small tablet. He whispered something to Claire while showing her a paused frame from a security camera. Her expression changed instantly. She looked from the screen to Ryan, then directly at Noah. "We found the hallway footage," she said. "It shows exactly what happened before the toast." Ryan's face finally lost every trace of confidence. Detective Claire accepted the tablet without saying another word. She watched the security footage once, then replayed it in complete silence. Noah remained beside me, his expression unreadable, while Ryan stood perfectly still with his hands folded in front of him. For a few long seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, Claire lowered the tablet and looked directly at Ryan. "Would you like to explain why you entered the service hallway 6 minutes before the toast carrying 1 champagne glass and returned carrying 3? The question echoed through the ballroom like a bell. Ryan gave a small laugh that sounded almost convincing. "I found 1 glass on a table and picked up 2 more from a server. Is that supposed to be suspicious?" Claire nodded. Thoughtfully. "Ordinarily, no." She turned the tablet around so that Ryan could see the paused image. "Except the video also shows you opening a small silver container while you were alone." My mother immediately stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. My son carries medication for migraines. You are twisting ordinary behavior into something sinister." Ryan looked at her with visible gratitude before turning back to Claire. "Exactly. I have prescription tablets. I can show you the bottle right now." "Please do," Claire replied calmly. Ryan reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed a small silver case. He opened it without hesitation. Inside were several white tablets arranged in neat rows. Claire examined them, but did not touch the case. "Thank you," she said. "Would you mind explaining why the laboratory number engraved inside this container does not match the prescription label registered to your physician?" Ryan's smile faded ever so slightly. "I replaced the container. The original one broke." "Convenient," Claire answered. My father stepped between them before the conversation could continue. "Enough. You have embarrassed this family for long enough. If you have evidence of a crime, present it. Otherwise, this wedding is over." Noah quietly reached into the pocket of his tuxedo and handed Claire a sealed envelope. "The accounting report," he said. Claire nodded before removing several printed pages. "These financial records document repeated transfers from the Blake Family Trust into shell companies authorized under Mr. Ryan Blake's digital credentials over the last 3 years." Ryan immediately shook his head. Those credentials were compromised. Claire looked at him carefully. "Perhaps. That is something investigators will determine. But there is one detail that concerns us more than the financial records." She placed the documents back into the envelope. "The laboratory completed a preliminary screening of residue collected from one of the champagne glasses." Every conversation in the ballroom stopped. Claire continued in the same calm voice. "The substance identified is not consistent with any medication listed under your medical history." Ryan finally lost his composure. "Preliminary screening proves nothing." "Correct," Claire agreed. "That is why additional testing is already underway." My mother turned toward me with tears forming in her eyes. "Ethan, please say something. This family has been through enough. Do not let today destroy your brother's future." Her words hurt more than I expected. Not because she was defending Ryan. Because even now she was asking me to protect someone else before protecting myself. I looked at her quietly. "Mom, did you ask him why he stopped me from changing glasses?" She hesitated. He was surprised. "No," I answered gently. "He was frightened." She lowered her eyes without replying. Ryan suddenly took one careful step toward me. His voice softened until only those closest could hear him. "Ethan, you know me. We grew up together. Are you really going to believe strangers over your own brother?" I looked at him for a long moment. Memories flooded back one after another. Every birthday where my accomplishments were quietly compared to his. Every apology I had made simply to keep peace in the house. Every time I had been told Ryan only wanted what was best for me. Then I remembered the panic in his eyes when I reached for Noah's glass. I slowly shook my head. I am not choosing strangers, I said. I am choosing the facts. Ryan's expression hardened. The warmth disappeared completely, replaced by a look so cold that I barely recognized the man standing in front of me. At that exact moment, Claire's phone vibrated. She answered immediately, listened without interrupting, then slowly looked up from the screen. The laboratory just completed the expanded analysis, she said, and they confirmed something none of us expected. The glass containing the altered residue was not the one Ethan was holding. The words settled over the ballroom with stunning silence. I stared at Detective Claire, convinced I had misunderstood her. What do you mean? I asked. She lowered her phone and spoke carefully. The altered residue was detected in the champagne glass originally handed to Noah. My breath caught. Every face in the room turned toward Ryan. He remained perfectly still, but the confidence that had carried him through the afternoon was finally gone. Noah did not look surprised. Instead, he quietly released a breath I had not realized he had been holding. So I was right, he said. Claire nodded. Based on the security footage, Mr. Blake prepared 3 glasses. He intended one specific glass for you. The sequence changed when Ethan suggested exchanging them. Suddenly, every strange detail from the afternoon fit together. Ryan had not panicked because I might drink from the wrong glass. He had panicked because he no longer knew whether Noah would receive the glass he had prepared. My brother had not expected me to question anything. He had expected me to trust him the way I always had. Ryan slowly looked at me. Ethan, his voice was almost pleading now. I never wanted this to happen. I met his eyes without looking away. Then tell me the truth. He closed his eyes for a long moment before speaking. I only wanted the wedding to stop. Nobody interrupted him. If Noah had become confused or embarrassed during the reception, Ryan continued quietly, people would have questioned his judgment. The ceremony would have fallen apart. The marriage would have been delayed. I only needed time. Time for what? I asked. Ryan looked toward the sealed envelope containing the financial records. To move the remaining money before you gained access to the trust. My mother covered her mouth in disbelief. My father stood frozen, unable to speak. Ryan looked at them with visible regret. I kept telling myself I could fix everything before anyone noticed. Every transfer was supposed to be temporary. Then the losses became too large. I could not put the money back. The ballroom remained silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Detective Claire stepped forward. Mr. Blake, you have the right to remain silent while investigators complete the financial and laboratory reviews. Ryan nodded weakly. He did not argue. He did not run. He simply looked at me one last time. I spent my whole life trying to stay ahead, he said quietly. When Grandpa changed the trust, I knew everything would eventually belong to you too. I could not accept that. Those words hurt more than any accusation ever could. Not because of the money, but because they confirmed something I had refused to believe for years. My brother had never been competing against the world. He had been competing against me. As hotel security respectfully escorted Ryan toward the exit with Detective Claire, my mother whispered his name through quiet tears. My father remained motionless, staring at the floor as though decades of certainty had disappeared beneath his feet. Neither of them asked me to stop the investigation anymore. There was nothing left to defend. The guests slowly began leaving the ballroom, speaking in hushed voices. The musicians quietly packed away their instruments. The photographers lowered their cameras. The perfect wedding I had imagined was gone, replaced by something far more honest. I looked at Noah, suddenly remembering the question that had lingered since the hospital. Why did you never tell me about the investigation? He answered without hesitation. Because I was afraid. I blinked in surprise. Afraid of what? Afraid that if I forced you to choose between me and your family before you saw the truth yourself, you would always wonder whether I had manipulated you. I stood there for several seconds before reaching for his hand. You were wrong about one thing, I said quietly. You never had to make that choice for me." His expression softened with relief. Together we walked back toward the ceremony platform. Most of the chairs were empty now. White flower petals still covered the aisle, untouched despite everything that had happened. The officiant, who had patiently remained nearby through the entire ordeal, smiled gently when he saw us return. There were no cameras left flashing, no applause, no grand audience. Just two people standing beneath white orchids, choosing each other without pressure, without illusion, and without pretending that life was perfect. As we exchanged our vows again, they sounded different than they had only hours before. Stronger, real. Later that evening, just as Noah and I prepared to leave the hotel, Detective Claire approached carrying one final document. "There is one more signature you should see," she said. I opened the last page from the trust records. My heart sank. One authorization approving several suspicious transfers had not been signed by Ryan at all. It had been signed by my mother.